Good afternoon. My name is Dylan Gray. Today I'm going to be discussing business ethics. First, we need to discuss what business ethics are. Ethics are principles, values, and beliefs that define right and wrong decisions and behavior. Um, Business ethics is the application of those principles, values, and beliefs in the world of business. It's important to remember with ethics that they are not unanimous. They're not the same amongst all people because these are based largely on values, and values are something that we're taught from a very young age. It's something that we grow up with, not something that's given to us when we're adults. Focus on ethics is growing in popularity recently as large-scale unethical practices are revealed, such as Enron, WorldCom, Volkswagen, and most recently the Mylan Pharmaceutical Company, which, if you don't know, recently overnight raised the prices of EpiPens to $600 a piece, which many consider to be unethical practices. Just a brief history on business ethics. Most of this information I got from a really outstanding article that I found online by a man named DeGeorge. Business ethics first came onto the scene, kind of common use in the early 1970s in the United States. It was jump-started by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which most people know prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin. What this did is this created, or businesses started creating equal opportunity organizations to make sure there was compliance to this act. Following that, there was the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 and the Environmental Protection Act. The first one basically set standards for work environments and set the standard for what is considered safe and healthy. The Environmental Protection Act basically set limitations on the impact that an organization can have on the environment, on the world. It went international with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. It just set some standards for United States companies doing business outside of the United States. Kind of along with this, there was the Sullivan Principles in 1978, which was created by General Motors and some other U.S. companies operating in South Africa. The problem here was that South Africa is famous for human rights violations, apartheid, and they were coming under a lot of heat for conducting business here. And as a way to kind of address this is they started being proactive about fighting or working towards solving some of these human rights violations there. The Defense Industry Initiative on Business Ethics and Conduct in 1986 incentivized placing ethical structures within organizations. Basically, it came to light that a lot of government contractors were behaving unethically, and so what they did is they created incentives to place kind of safeguards for ethical practices. And if an unethical practice was discovered, a company could reduce its fine by 95% if they could just show that they had some of these safeguards in place, like they were trying to avoid it. Then there was the development of corporate ethics officers and their association in 1992. One of the most recent acts is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. This followed scandals such as Enron and WorldCom, and what it does is it holds CEOs and CFOs accountable. In these situations with Enron and WorldCom, the CEOs and CFOs basically claimed ignorance to the unethical practices that were happening. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act says, you can't just claim to be ignorant. That makes sure that they're accountable, which the idea is if they're going to be held accountable, they're going to make sure that things are behaving ethically within their company. And then kind of a more recent thing is the triple bottom line. And basically that's just saying when you're reporting to stockholders, shareholders, instead of just reporting the financial aspects of your company, you also report your social impact and your environmental impact. The steps you're taking to go green, the steps you're taking to improve the community, things like that. This triple bottom line kind of falls along with social responsibility. It's basically saying that a company should minimize the harm it does to the environment and not damage the community that it's operating within. There are some differing opinions about this. There's the classical view, which is basically saying that a company's, I don't want to say only, but their main priority is profit. That's what they're supposed to do. That's their priority for their shareholders. There's also the socio-economic view, which is basically saying that you should behave in the way that the public wants you to behave. And so you're doing things because people want you to. And then there's social responsiveness, which is kind of the most advanced ideology. And basically this is saying that you do these things, you protect the environment, you help your community because you want to, because it's something you should do. To put it kind of in perspective, a company that meets, minimum pollution standards that's set upon it, they're meeting their social obligation. But if they take that step further and they clean, they're cleaning the water supply, they're taking reforestation steps, then they're being socially responsible. There's many reasons why business ethics are important to a company. These include long-term growth, cost and risk reduction, anti-capitalist sentiment, and limited resources. Discussing long-term growth, the reason ethics is such a big issue is because unethical practices are tempting. They result in large profits very, very quickly. But it's kind of a boom and bust kind of mindset. You take bigger risks and that means bigger profit, but you take these risks and eventually it's going to collapse on itself. Organizations are realizing that, like the tortoise and the hare, slow and steady wins the race. Stable profits are better for business longevity. You might not make $1 billion overnight, but you'll still be around making profit, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Companies need to focus on these benefits of ethical practices and see that in the long run it creates more profit. What cost and risk reduction is talking about here is basically saying that loyalty and trust have almost a tangible value to them in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. And the cost control systems. You create a reliable product and people trust it, people are going to purchase it, and you're not spending as much money replacing it. A highly ethical company is going to spend less money protecting itself against fraud and spend less money on public relations to create support and maintain morale, because the public's already going to like them. They're going to trust them, they're going to be loyal to them because they're an ethical company. Kind of going along with this trust that you're trying to build, especially nowadays, there is almost a negative mindset on these huge corporations. These big profits they're making, it breeds distrust and anger from the population. A lot of people kind of just assume that these profits were made less than ethically, whether or not that's actually true. But if a company has a strong ethical stance, is very clearly and openly an ethical company trying to do the right thing, that improves public opinion. And so when you do have these profits, they're not going to look at them negatively. Limited resources, this is pretty self-explanatory. The planet's resources are limited. It kind of goes along with that whole short-term vision overshadowing long-term. If you use up all your resources now, you're not going to have them 20 years from now. And so it's important to consider the environment that you're in and help preserve some of those resources for later on down the road. Kind of big problem with business ethics is when it comes to international companies. Certain practices in one country may be considered unethical, but in a different country, it's perfectly fine. There's different opinions on how to address these issues. There's the Friedman Doctrine, which is basically saying that if you're going to get ahead however you need to do it. It doesn't matter. Then there's cultural relativism, and that is saying that whichever country you're operating in, those are the ethics that you should adhere to. There's also the righteous moralist, who is, this is right, this is wrong, wherever I am, that's how it's going to be. Then there's the naive moralist, and the naive moralist is basically saying, if they are doing it, I'm going to do it too. Some common ethical issues which arise when conducting business in foreign countries, their employment practices, human rights, environmental pollution, and corruption. Just so you kind of know that this isn't just a mindset or a theory, that it's actually proven. There was a study done by Persons, and what he did was he took 94 businesses with no code of ethics and basically compared them to 94 businesses that had a code of ethics as the control group. And what they found is that companies with no code of ethics had a weaker future financial performance. Some ways to kind of create and sustain an ethical climate. There's formal ethics policies and procedures that you can have in place. You can't legislate an ethical climate, but some legislation can help. You can have a set code of ethics. You can have reporting mechanisms so that people can report unethical behavior, and then also have disciplinary procedures, punishments for when people behave unethically. Also, there's the process focus, and what that's saying is pay less attention to achieving the goal and pay more attention to how those goals are achieved. It's about the journey, it's not about the destination. And then there's different structural reinforcement you can put in place. There's performance evaluations. Let people know if they're behaving the way you want them to behave. And then there's anonymous reporting. Companies should allow that kind of to allow unethical practices to be reported without worry about fallback. Along those lines also comes the whistleblowing acts. These whistleblowing acts protect people who report this unethical behavior. And that ends my presentation. The slide here shows the references I had. If you're interested in business ethics, I highly recommend you take a look at these. I found them very, very interesting, and thank you for listening.